It is Vessel Vision.
Vessoul Tuesday.
Let's do it. What do we got today? What's our topic?
Hi, everyone. Hi, our lovely listeners. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Claire.
Um, so today, maybe this has been you. Have you ever kind of sat and thought and pondered, oh, I don't know, what's the meaning of life? What's my purpose? Why am I here? Just casual thoughts of the human experience. But it's funny because you can just Google, like, what's my purpose? And there's so much out there to help people discover, like, what's their purpose? What are they here to do? Why are they here? Right? So we know that it is a core fundamental question that humans ask. And it can also be the source of a lot of angst, a lot of stress, of like needing to find my purpose in order to feel a sense of fulfillment, in order to feel like there's a reason for me to get out of bed every day. So it can really actually be a bit of a distraction from being in the present moment. I have to find my purpose. I have to find my purpose. But it can be a very beautiful and helpful thing too, because we also all know the feeling of what it feels like to be living in your purpose. Like, it is fulfilling, it lights you up inside. And so today we're gonna examine, what do we do with this question, what is my purpose?
Well, there's so many tangential thoughts and topics and examples we could talk about. I decided to pull a tarot card because I thought let's just bring some measure of practicality to this with a tarot card, which is hysterical. But I pulled the Fool card, which is, I thought, hysterical because the Fool is zero, but the first card of major arcanas in the tarot deck, and it represents the beginning and the end. And so you think of that in our lives, right? Like, we go through our lives. What am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right track? It also, the Fool card, governs or represents the crown chakra, which is connection to the divine, and our root chakra, which is our connection in physicality and earthly form on this earth, and issues related to survival on earth and all of that. So what kind of came to me through me in that card draw, our purpose is to bring the experience, right, the wisdom, the divine light of the higher realms, into our bodies, right, into the earth, and then to radiate that divinity, which is the perfection of love, outward, right? Okay, so that's like the big thing. But it was also the Fool card because it's like only the human would sit there. What is my purpose? Am I fulfilling my purpose? And the Fool card is also a card of like endless possibilities. So our purpose, there's endless possibilities. It can change in what it looks like, whether it's I'm a teacher now, well, now I'm a healer, or I'm a mother, or, I'm whatever, I'm a life coach, or I'm a mathematician. That can change, right? Those possibilities can change, but it's the energy that we bring to the endeavor that is probably more our purpose than we understand. And then one more thing about the Fool card, there's a beautiful naivete to the Fool. There's an innocence. And I think, maybe if we bring an energy of innocence to that question rather than that egoic mind of like, I got to figure it out, I don't think I'm living my purpose, just that innocence to the question itself is probably helpful.
Hmm. Yeah, because I wonder, like, what point in our lives children are not sitting around asking what their purpose is.
No, no.
I wonder at what point, we start to have, and maybe it is with the development of the ego or the sense of self, an individual sense of self, that it's like, oh shit, if I'm an individual, that must mean I have to like prove my worth for being here. Instead of like, what if our purpose is just simply to be the most authentic, joyful expression of whoever the fuck you are? And that can change.
Totally. And you're the only person that can do that job. I think the question about am I fulfilling my purpose, I'll speak for myself, is when I look around and I look at others and what others are doing and how my accomplishments or lack thereof compare
Mm.
or contrast to someone else's experience or expression of their purpose. Because if I weren't comparing myself to what I'm seeing externally, I probably wouldn't be sitting there wondering if I'm doing enough. Am I doing it correctly?
Yeah, and Julie, do you have that card handy? Because it's just hysterical and I love it so much with there's a little kitty with the party hat on. And my interpretation of that card is also like, you're here to just have a good freaking time. Like, enjoy yourself.
Totally.
Oh,
Well, and that is that radiation of that joy, right? Of that love, of that high vibration. Like, sometimes I try and like visualize my biofield. Yeah, like a total nerd. And on days that I'm like being silly and I'm like talking to my cat and singing in the kitchen, it's got all these beautiful patterns and it's colorful and it's like sparking off all this stuff that's going out into the world. And then on days when I'm like, oh my God, it's cloudy again. And I can't even believe she said that to me. Like, who says that? And like, when is this going to end? Then I'm like, ooh, my biofield is looking pretty sticky, pretty slow, right? And I do think of that. And then I think, well, I go out into the world with that energy around me, I am impacting the world. So if truly our purpose, no matter what we're doing or what hat we're wearing or what role we're playing, was to have this cohesive, radiant field extending from us out into the world, like, okay, and it's not so easy. And you don't get paid a lot of money sometimes for that, but it's pretty freaking important.
that kind of lines up with this quote from Alan Watts that I found. It says, "The meaning of life is just to be alive." It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. And yet, everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond ourselves. And I love that you brought in that egoic need to achieve, or like I was saying, like prove ourselves in some way, that like I matter. I'm bringing value to society because I can da 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 da. You know?
Totally, because it's the little me, it's the small me that needs to believe that when I leave this earth or at my funeral, people are going to remember me by that I mattered in some way. And that is identifying with the little me, Julie, that thinks I am Julie. And it's like, well, that's just a tiny little representation of the truth of who I really am. I remember saying once to my guides, I was sitting outside. I can remember the day. I had these rocking chairs, and I was like bereft. I was burdened with the state of the world and the suffering of the people around me. And I'm a total empath. And so, I mean, I feel things. And I was crying. And I felt like I'm not doing enough. I'm just not doing enough. Like, how can this be? I should be doing more. And, I was like talking to my guides, like, come on, man. I want to be of more service. And they said, if you only understood that your energy field of love and compassion and care for the so-called other is changing lives from this rocking chair, you would never question your purpose on this earth. And I mean, when they said that, I was bawling even harder.
I'm like tearing up. There's chills. It's just so powerful.
Yeah, and that changed my judgment of myself. I was judging myself that I was small me. I'm not doing enough. I don't matter much because I mean, my God, my worldly accomplishments. I mean, I don't have any big awards. I don't have any, thousands of followers telling me I'm someone noteworthy. I've done some things in my life that have been met with not much fanfare, to be honest. And, that's me comparing myself to others. But when they said that, I just sobbed because I'm like, okay, I, I'm doing it. And I don't know who needs to hear that. If you think that, you're not doing enough. If you're an expression of love, and you get up every day and try and radiate like that goodness, you're doing the heaviest lifting there is.
Yeah. And sometimes our actually, I think a lot of times our purpose finds us. Like we don't have to be going out and grabbing and finding and developing and building. And this is coming from a place Julie and I are currently building a brand and trying to figure out what is our business and what is our reach and all this stuff. So there is a practical element of that, which is very important and helpful, but in the bigger picture of like what are we doing, it usually finds us. So when I was in my 20s, coming off of a lot of recovery, and I was working like three different jobs. I was working at a gym, I was cleaning houses, I was working at a coffee shop, just trying to make ends meet. And, I was like 24, 25 years old, starting to be like, okay, I probably need some sort of plan here. Like, what am I doing with my life? And my mom was like, well, how about you go apply to be a substitute teacher? And so I did at this private school in St. Louis and ended up getting a long-term sub job, which was hysterical. Like especially at this like private Christian school, if they knew the life I was living at that time, you probably wouldn't have gotten the job. But they ended up liking my work enough that they offered me a full-time teaching position. I went back to grad school to become a teacher. And teaching was some of the most fulfilling years and experiences of my life. So people are always like, oh, did you know you wanted to be a teacher? I was like, no, absolutely not. But it's interesting. So a lot of that self-help stuff, if you read a book or if you read someone's blog about how to find your purpose, you've probably heard this. It's like, how do you know what you want to do? How do you know what you're really good at? Go back to what you did as a kid, right? And as a kid, I would force my sister to play school with me, and I would be the teacher. And of course, I'd give her all of her grades. And uh, she was, God bless her, along for the ride. But, so that was interesting too. It's like, oh my God, I used to play pretend this as a kid. And now I'm teaching in a different capacity. And, it shifts and it changes. And your purpose, I think it also comes down to like our attachment to our purpose. you know, Leaving teaching was a whole identity crisis for me because I'm like, oh my God, if I'm not a teacher, who am I?
Totally.
And so our purpose can become this like defining factor of who we are and our worth as a person. So that's a good little gauge. It's like, okay, what are the ways that you define yourself? What are the ways you define your purpose? And if that was no longer the case in your life, how would you be?
Well, and who would you deem yourself to be?
Yeah,
So, those titles are often hiding places.
right.
We can hide out in the titles and never truly discover who we are behind that identity, that title, so, and that can be very scary. It's like the emperor has no clothes, if, I think of my brother as a doctor, and we've, have different ways of approaching health. And, some of the things I believe has challenged what he's learned and how he got, his degree as a doctor. And I've thought to myself, if he were not a doctor, and not a father, I think he would have a moment of an existential, what we're not going to call it a crisis, because my brother would not allow himself to have a crisis, but it would be, I believe, really destabilizing for a period of time, because he's a very good, beautiful man who wanted to use his brain, which is a fine brain, it's a wonderful brain, to go be of service to help people, right? And then he feels good about himself and what he's doing, and he's getting a lot of accolades, from the external world, telling him he's amazing. He gets these grants and he travels internationally. If all that went away, I think there'd be a moment of not knowing, who am I? Because he's spent so much of his life becoming the doctor.
And
You know,
follow his natural path. I mean, it just seems like he wasn't trying to become something he wasn't. He just kind of naturally, with his gifts, not fell, but worked hard to get to where he is.
totally. And, he knew since he was a young child, he was born with that, like, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to go to Notre Dame. And I mean, I'm just scratching my head as his older sister, because I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to be doing. And my path has been all over the place. I've been 20 different things, and his has been so linear. In the messiness, though, of my exploration, which wasn't purposeful, I was just that messy. In that messiness, I was really forced to explore kind of the crags and shadows of all the stuff about me that was not looked at, not pretty, not healed. And so sometimes when someone is able to follow such a successful and linear path, they don't have to. They're not really brought to their knees to kind of go, oh, oh, this isn't who I am. So I don't know.
Until usually retirement, which is why we see so many people enter into retirement. They've worked with purpose their whole life, and now it's like, and now I'm not working. I'm not bringing in money, or where's my worth? Who am I? At least I think we see that a lot, especially with men, particularly. And this is a large generalization, but men really, really value their careers. Not that women don't, but it really is such an identity piece for them. And so I just watched my dad go into retirement, and he's done a good job of like finding hobbies, but when you have that pause, that time to really evaluate, then a lot of people do go into an existential crisis. So I'd love to kind of, I don't know, define existential crisis, because I think it's helpful in understanding kind of what we're talking about here. So Julie and I had talked about the myth of Sisyphus, and maybe you've heard of this, but there's all these different reasons why, different interpretations. But at some point, this guy Sisyphus pissed off the gods, did something to piss off the gods of the underworld. So he's cursed to roll this massive boulder up a mountain every day for the rest of his life. And when he gets to the top of the mountain, what happens? The boulder rolls right back down. He hikes back down the mountain and starts pushing it back up forever, for all eternity. And so it's this kind of beautiful metaphor of like the meaninglessness of life, and the whole existential movement in the 20s, 30s, 40s. That was the big question. It was actually, life is meaningless. And maybe y'all have seen this cute little meme. I've seen it go around on social media a lot. there's two people sitting in a train, and one's looking out the window and he's very sad and he's depressed and he says life is meaningless. And then the one on the other side is looking out the window like, all stoked and excited and says life is meaningless. And so the existential philosophy is life is meaningless. We don't get to choose to exist, which, we think a little bit differently, but if we don't get to choose to exist, our only free will is in choosing our own purpose and reason for being here. And it's got to be a choice that we can live with. And existentialists don't believe in any kind of divine external, like, oh, God's got a plan for me. They don't believe in any of that. But that doesn't have to be depressing. And for a lot of existentialist philosophers, it was actually really freeing. So when we look at that myth, do you feel like you're pushing this boulder up a mountain every day just to have it roll back down? And Albert Camus, who wrote The Stranger, he wrote this whole essay about Sisyphus. And I'd love to read what he says, because his interpretation is that Sisyphus is happy because he has work to do, because he has his own sense of purpose. So he says, I leave Sisyphus at the foot of the mountain. One always finds one's burden again. But Sisyphus teaches the higher fidelity that negates the gods and raises rocks. He too concludes that all is well. This universe henceforth without a master seems to him neither sterile nor futile. Each atom of that stone, each mineral flake of that night-filled mountain, in itself forms a world. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. So, regardless of your background, regardless of your religious beliefs, your world perspective, why are we here? What's the meaning of life? We get the free will to choose what our purpose will be. And can we find deep contentment in that purpose, even if it's just pushing a boulder up a hill?
All right. While you were saying that, the guide said, in our form on this earth, we are often perceived, experience life as a beast of burden, as a blessing and bringer of light. So while we are these beasts of burden, because we are, there are burdens, whether it's the burden of raising children, which is also a blessing, but in the beast of burden, we are these animals pushing rocks, building things, hoisting children, gathering food. These are what we're doing with our body as a beast of burden, as a blessing and bringer of light. So we have these bodies to do things with them, right? So, if I were to just sit here on the couch and say, well, the guides told me, I just radiate goodness all day. And that's like really all I do. It's amazing. I have a body. My body would decay. I would begin to deteriorate. So Sisyphus, he's using his physicality, his muscles, his energy, right? His determination to move things, to move, physical matter through life. So we choose, do we want to, push that rock up? Do we want to chop down something? I don't know. Do we want to build something? But it's the way in which we do it, the attitude that we bring to it, that either creates more beauty and harmony in the world, or chaos, disease, and destruction.
Right. And it makes me think of the story of Adam and Eve too. Like, God gave Adam work to do. And that was actually part of the curse, which is interesting. after there's this division between God and humans, the part of the curse is that humans now have to work the land. Women have to work to bring life into the world. So whether you want to look at that as a burden or a gift, the reality is that myth gets to the truth of we are hardwired to do work. So what work do you want to do? And maybe you don't like the word work. We can look at it a different word, but what's the
Well, and I wanted to say a couple things when you were speaking, and I didn't want to interrupt. One about men and their identity, and that when they're more identified with their job, even though yes, women also can be very identified with their job. But I think women, I'll speak for myself, experience the same who to what where when your children all leave. I don't think men experience it to the same degree because oftentimes, and again, I don't want to, this isn't a blanket statement, but oftentimes, as the woman who carried the baby in her, body, gave birth, it's it's hardwired that my raising my kids was my primary purpose once I gave birth to them. I mean, that came first before anything else. And so, my youngest just left, I don't know, a couple months ago. And I thought I would be like, dancing a jig because certainly hasn't been an easy 35 years of raising my kids. And there was, and there still is sometimes this sense of like, oh my gosh, what, it feels very strange. It's very strange not to get up each day and at least think about what does she need, or what do they need, what am I cooking for dinner, is there enough food in the house, are there, just those basics. And there's a freedom and in stretching out and considering the options and the possibilities and the like, but it is very bizarre and very foreign. So that was one thing. And then another thing, I've had times in my life where I think I need to go, I don't know, get a degree in something. Even recently, I was like, ooh, I might become a certified hypnotherapist. That might be super fun. And I was like, I could get the certification. And then, I mean, of course, more people would come to me because now I have the certification from the special college. It's really, really fancy college. And my guides always say to me about these kind of things, you have encoded in you all that you need. You only need to access the information. But if it would delight you and bring you joy to study deeper from those who have gone further on this path than you at this time, feel free to do so. Please do so. But only if it's coming from the place that it would delight you and bring you joy to do so. Not that, well, it would make me more credible. And then I could charge more money. And then I could make more money and I'll get more clients. It's like the energy of doing something from that is very different.
Wow. Yeah. And I think that can fill the holes of our insecurities. I know for me, for sure, it's like, well, I'm not qualified to live, even if I'm like, oh, this might be part of my purpose, I'm not yet qualified. So
Right.
kind of that, it's a delay tactic a little bit too. It's like, oh no, not right now because I'm not ready. And that comes back to like your purpose will find you.
Well, and who actually decided what the degree, the requirements of the degree? Some person was like, I am going to create a curriculum and offer certification, and everyone will follow in my way of doing this, and I will deem them ready, which is hysterical. I mean, I think about Reiki, and there's different ways to practice Reiki. There's like holy fire, and there's different ones and you can get different. And it's like studying to be an artist. I mean, you can learn some technical skills and incantations and signs, but it's either coming from within you, from that creative. To create is to heal, and that's coming right now. To
Mhm.
create is to heal. So, I mean, as we're creating whatever it is we're creating, a healing practice, a piece of art, we are healing. We're healing ourselves. So, I don't know. I mean, it's that fine line between the humility of knowing that I'm not the master at everything, but at the same time, knowing I hold within me all that is required to become the master.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And I think a lot of times when people go through challenging times or really painful times, when it's like when the healing is like most needed, that's usually when we're asking the question, what is the meaning of life? What is why am I here? It's not when we're at the top of the mountain, when we're like peaking, we're like, oh God, why am I here? Because you feel it in your body. You're like, this is why I'm here, to be in my joy, to be this expression, this creative expression of healing. But maybe y'all have heard, Julie and I love this book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And he has this beautiful story. He was captured during World War II and interned in a concentration camp and barely made it out alive. He did survive. None of his family survived. So this man who experienced deep, deep loss, you when we think of like the concentration camps of World War II, that's like the deepest, most evil, dark pit of despair of like at least our human history. And he writes this beautiful book about the meaning of life, and I just it's profound. And this is just a quote that he says: "Don't aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you're going to miss it. For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue, and it only does so as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as the byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. Happiness must happen, and the same holds for success. You have to let it happen by not caring about it. I want you to listen to what your conscience demands you to do and go on to carry it out to the best of your knowledge. Then you will live to see that in the long run, I say, success will follow you precisely because you had forgotten to think about it." And then he also says, ultimately, man should not ask what the meaning of his life is, but rather must recognize that it is he who is asked. In a word, each man is questioned by life, and he can only answer to life by answering for his own life. To life, he can only respond by being responsible. So, again, that concept of like your purpose isn't something to go out and find, to discover, but life is asking us this question. What is your inner guidance asking you to do? And that's the only thing we're here to do, right? This inner drive to serve or to help or to play a specific role.
And it's pretty simple. I try to remember to ask myself this at the end of the day. In what ways was I an expression of love today? And in what ways did I forget that myself or the other was love?
Hmm.
It's That's a successful life. If I can string together enough days where I remember to be the expression of love and I remember the other to be an expression of love, that's it. That's it. did it.
You really ask yourself that at the end of each day?
Not every day, but very often. And
Love
which
that.
way, in which ways was I an expression of love today, and in which ways did I forget to be an expression of love? And when I see things coming at me, or people maybe being mean or not being kind or thoughtful to me directly, of course I'm like, ugh, because I'm a person and it still hurts whether the other intended it or not. I say to my kids, if someone drops a bowling ball on your foot on purpose or accident, it still hurts the same amount. But I try and say, she just forgot that she was loved today. And if I'm judging her and I come back forgetting I was also loved, I'm like, okay, nope, you forgot you were loved today. And I don't do it every day, but I do it often. And I wake up every day and I'm like, work through me. Whatever you want me to be, the words you want me to say. I think I course correct faster than I used to. But I could be the most brilliant, whatever. You and I could have 100,000 followers, and if I'm kind of a dick, I wouldn't view myself as successful. And that's just me, because I don't know. I think we're here to be a light and to radiate. And I think about what you and I do each week. We come together and we have these discussions. I enjoy. I feel enlivened when you and I connect and share this way. If I were to judge the worthiness of this endeavor on external statistics, we wouldn't still be doing this. But I'm listening to my body, I'm listening to the joy. And I guess I'm saying that to other people who are on a path and maybe it's not affirming externally. The affirmations aren't there yet, right? You're not getting that raise at work, you didn't get the promotion, you don't have as the number of followers that you want, or the love of your life that's reflecting back to you that you're amazing, whatever it is. If you're in joy when you're doing something, when you finish something that you do for whether it's 5 minutes or 5 hours, if you feel that energy coming through you and there's a little smile like the corners of your mouth, you're doing it.
And at the end of your life, you're talking about the end of your day. At the end of your life, what will you look back on and value as purposeful, as meaningful? I think I will want to say I was the most beautiful, powerful expression of love that I could have possibly been. Not all the other things, although they're important, and we're not shitting on deeply being involved in your purpose. Of course we want that.
Passion, bring passion and play to any purpose. No purpose is worth the endeavor without the energy of passion and the energy of play.
Well, that seems like a great place to finish.
Okay. All right.
So,
as always, it's great to do this with you, Claire.
I love you.
I love you.
It's an honor to get to just be exploring our expressions together. So
till next time. I get to see you soon in North Carolina. Yay!
Can't wait.
All right. Love you.